Mankind has been making coracles for millennia. Our Bronze Age ancestors used them for travelling and fishing. And in the Bible, baby Moses was reputedly hidden in the bulrushes in a caulked basket, a coracle. Here on the River Severn in Shropshire, in the UK, Eustace Rogers' family from Ironbridge poached in coracles for generations. Shrewsbury Town Football Club own a coracle, and until quite recently employed coracle man Fred Davis to fish stray footballs out of the river when the players got a little too enthusiastic. So, when Shrewsbury's Men's Shed and their friends were looking for a team-building community project, creating coracles just seemed the natural thing to do. With enthusiastic guidance from Dave Purvis of the Coracle Society, the challenge was to create 6 coracles from wood to water in just a couple of days. This is how they did it. And by following this video, you can do it too. Day 1. The whole boat is centred around the seat, or thwart, a piece of softwood timber about 3 feet long, 10 inches wide and 1 inch thick. Coracles, being ancient craft, are always measured in feet and inches. No modern metrification here. The seat will need battens screwed into either end, 12 inches by 1.5 inches by 1 inch, to fasten the seat to the ensuing framework. We're going to build the boat upside down to begin with. The seat sits on 3 legs. Countersink the screws to avoid snagging your trousers later. The basket of the boat is built from ash laths, which have already been soaking in water long enough to make them as pliable as possible, usually a couple of days. Ideally, these are 3/16 of an inch thick, 1.5 inches wide, and a good 8 feet long. These will become the long stringers of the boat, running from front to back, and the ribs, which run from side to side. Limber up your first lath by flexing it, especially where it is going to be bent. Reject any laths that have knots in them. They tend to crack. To create the profile of the coracle, attach the first lath to the ends of the legs, the first rib. Decking screws cope best with the inevitable wet at the bottom of the boat. Set the screws off-centre to leave space to screw in the first longitudinal stringers later on. Shaping the lath as you go, pull it down to the baton and nail it there. Be thoughtful here because this will determine the ultimate shape of the coracle. So do check that all the curves look in harmony with the shape you wish to achieve. Do the same on the other side, creating a mirror image profile. It's a good idea to blunt the end of the nails to avoid splitting the thin laths. Now for the gunnel. The gunnel is the top rim of the coracle. Shrewsbury coracles are traditionally lozenge-shaped rather than oval or egg-shaped. A lozenge is an oblong with rounded corners. That's what you're after. At its furthest point, the back or stern gunnel lath should ideally be 20 inches from the edge of the seat. The bow, front gunnel lath, should be 27 inches from the front edge of the seat to allow space for your feet. It's good to keep the gunnel parallel with the surface of the water. String is very helpful here, to pull the rim into shape before clamping it and nailing it. This upper part of the coracle is less likely to get soaked, so you can use galvanized nails here. The gunnel is the part of the boat that takes most of the punishment in use, so We'll be laminating it 5 layers thick. Add the second layer now. Now for the first 3 longitudinal laths, the stringers. Find the middle of the lath by balancing it. Fit the central lath first, screwing it into the end of the middle leg, and then flexing it into shape to reach the outside of the rim. Once you've got the right shape, clamp it in place. Add another stringer lath either side of this first one, again clamping them in place and adjusting them to look identical in shape. Be sure they are evenly spaced and create the coracle profile you want. We're going to use 1-inch galvanized nails to fix the stringers to the rim. The nails can be blunted first, so they are less likely to split the laths. You should then clench the protruding end of the nail by bending it over with pliers or a hammer and burying the point into the lath. Then it can't do any damage. Now put in 4 more stringers, 2 either side of the one already fastened to the seat legs. Again, these should be evenly spaced, 4 fingers apart with matching profiles. Next, proceed to fit the ribs across the width of the boat. Clamp the middle of the ribs to the middle of the stringers and then to the gunnel. Check the overall shape of the boat is to your liking. An organic shape is fine. Wherever 2 laths meet on the floor of the boat, hammer in a copper nail, knocking it in from the inside of the boat. You can use another hammer as a dolly on the other side to force the end over and bury it in the lath. Where the rib meets on the outside of the gunnel, use a galvanized nail. You can always add more water before bending if a lath starts to dry out. Using copper nails to hold the laths together is another characteristic of a Shrewsbury design of coracle. Trim off the stray ends of the laths. And you should now have a basket that baby Moses would recognise. Now's the time to ensure you have no protruding nails that might puncture the coracle skin by firmly clenching them. Next, we add 2 full-length diagonal laths inside the coracle, like a Scottish saltire flag, to strengthen the ship. Fix them in place with copper nails to the ribs and stringers, and a galvanized nail to the gunnel or rim. Here we add a 3rd lath to the outside of the gunnel to hold everything together for a tight frame. You might like to chamfer the edges of the seat to save your legs from injury. Shorter offcuts of lath can be added to make a floor for your feet, or nailed to the legs beneath your seat as a bulwark to stop your catch if you have a fishing license and gear from slithering round your legs. To protect your craft, cuprinol wood preservative is liberally applied to ribs, stringers, seat, legs, the lot. We now leave the coracle to dry and set its shape overnight. The last great River Severn coracle man was Eustace Rogers of Ironbridge, descended from a long line of poachers.
They couldn't have done this without the coracle and the river, say. And they would be poaching 10, 12 miles, and they would always have a coracle up the river. Not too far up, because it's easier for them to walk home than it is to come down the river. This was the art of the coracle. You made it as light as you could, because it's a boat that's always carried upstream, see. You never think of paddling it up. It's so easily conveyed on your back, and away you go. It is the early known boat. They don't know anything earlier than that. Going back to the primitive man.
Eustace Rogers used the age-old paddling method to his dying day.
Make a long figure 8 over the front, holding the paddle at arm's length, not letting it come back to the boat, arm's length all the while. Put it as far as you can in front of you like that, and pull the water to you like that.
So this all came about really through just conversations that started with Dave Purvis at the North England Woodworking Show. So Dave and I have met for the last couple of years at the show, where I'd be there with the UK Men's Sheds Association. Dave was there with Ripon Men's Shed, and he talked to me about coracles. We had a conversation about how it's one of the endangered crafts that people no longer know how to do. And kind of Dave's idea was to harness men's sheds into learning some of the ways of coracle making.
Typical shed scenario, a whole group of diverse people working together and achieving something and having fun.
We were given a seat, loads of instruction by Dave, who's very, very good, and led in the right direction, steered us in the right direction, and then off we went.
Next morning, apply gaffer tape to any protruding nail ends exposed on the underside of the coracle, just to afford a little extra protection when in contact with or rubbing against the fabric. The calico cloth is then rolled out and cut to size. Measure the widest points of the length and breadth of the boat and add 6 inches to each dimension to allow for folding the cloth over and inside the gunnels.
So we then fold that over, taking about the width of the lat, which is 1.5 inches, and then we're going to pin that down. You notice I'm applying pressure on the top as well.
The cloth edge is folded over on the inside of the gunnel and stapled in place, pleating it where necessary on the corners.
It's quite handy when you're working on the boat, work in pairs. And it's just like, if you know what hospital corners are, when you're making the bed, you've got to have nice hospital corners. So what we're doing is making a pleat on both sides. So you can see what happens when that is, make sure you've got all the wrinkles out. So you can see the pleat there.
The open trailing edges of all the pleats should face the rear of the coracle, so debris doesn't gather in the pleats and create a pocket for water to gather. The openings are then stitched up with doubled up, extra strong cotton thread. A semicircular sailmaker's needle makes the job easier. They are available from most dress shops.
doing the Bayer tapestry, and we're
Now comes the messy bit. You'll need protective gloves and floor and table coverings. Oil-based black bitumen paint is more durable, but you have to leave it overnight to dry between coats. Water-based emulsified paint will dry in 20 minutes. In either case, it will only be applied to the outside of the boat, though pleats on the inside can also be painted. Dilute the paint by 25% terps or water for the first coat. Be careful not to overload the brush, but do be careful to protect the seat with newspaper and tape to avoid splashes. Work the bitumen into the pleats first. Then cover the rest of the hull and then apply another dose of bitumen to the pleats. 3 coats are recommended, with time to dry in between. The bitumen will shrink and tighten the calico. It's good to apply the bitumen to the top of the gunnel too, and then add one final luff to the outside of the gunnel as a protective rubbing strip. Your boat is now ready to float. Check for leaks before you climb in. You'll need a paddle, of course. The Shrewsbury paddle is also made of ash, and the ridge is on the front of the paddle, away from the paddler. Naturally, there is technique involved. Keep it forward of the boat and describe a figure of 8. The paddle should never leave the water.
Learned a lot, and I wasn't really interested in coracle making at all, but having done it, really impressed.
Yeah, it's been amazing. It was really challenging, but I enjoy the challenge, and now I can probably say I'm a master coracle builder.
Well, they're a very basic boat, probably the oldest watercraft apart from sitting on logs. They certainly predated the wheel by quite a few millennia, and they're fairly cheap, even with the cost of timber nowadays to build, and I'm crusading to keep coracles in people's memory, and hopefully keep people building and paddling for the future.
It's a craft that's dying out, and it's particularly associated with Shrewsbury in terms of the type of coracle. It's associated with Shrewsbury because of Fred Davis fishing the footballs out of the river for Shrewsbury Town Football Club. And it's fun because you can get on the water, have a paddle, you know, have a laugh. They're quite a stable craft. I mean, if it can cope with me in it, it must be stable. So I mean, what an excuse to have a good time. Great.